So hi, I'm Lindsay, and I've been looking at using quantum computing to break classical cryptosystems. So cryptography is the science of secrets, and we use cryptosystems every day to hide information that we send people. It's used in online banking and buying things online, and pretty much any time you don't want people to know what you're doing. However, if a quantum computer is built, a lot of the classical cryptosystems we use every day will be in danger of being broken. So a quantum computer works similarly to a classical computer. So a classical computer uses bits as its basic building block, and a bit can either be a 0 or a 1, on or off states. However, a quantum bit or a qubit can be 0, 1, or any superposition of the two. This is a block sphere, and it basically is a visual representation of what a qubit is. We have 0 at one pole, 1 at the other, and the surface of the sphere represents the states. So like you can do computing by applying gates to your bits, you can apply quantum gates to your qubits to transform them from one state to another. Except quantum gates are always unitary, so they're just rotations around the sphere. So because a qubit can be both 0 and 1 at the same time in superposition, this gives us quantum parallelism, where we're basically running multiple processes at the same time. Quantum parallelism can be very useful in breaking cryptosystems. So public key cryptography is different from what we usually think of when we think of cryptography, which is I have a secret key, you have a secret key. We use those keys to exchange messages because the keys can both encrypt and decrypt the messages. In public key cryptography, I have a secret key and I have a public key, and anyone else can send me messages using my public key, but only I can decrypt them with the secret key. So this means that public key cryptography, cryptosystems are based on hard mathematical problems where it's easy to do the problem one way, but it's very, very hard to reverse it without a secret piece of information, which serves as the secret key. So the most well-known example of public key cryptography is RSA, and that's based on the problem of factoring, which is a problem that quantum computers will be able to solve. So the cryptosystems I was looking at are based on the subset sum problem, also known as the knapsack problem. So this can be stated as, given a set B of integers, what subset of them add up to an arbitrary target integer? And this problem is really hard for computers to do, because if you look at this set of numbers here, and I'm given a target, you can't just look at that set of numbers and figure out which ones you need to add together. You basically have to try all the combinations until you find the right one. This is the solution here. So, however, this problem is actually easy to solve for certain sets, like super-increasing sets. So a lot of knapsack cryptosystems are based on the idea of concealing an easy set as a hard set. Some cryptosystems that are based on this problem are the Merkle-Hellman and the Horror-Best, which is one of the ones I looked at. So for my project, I was trying to answer the question, are these cryptosystems secure? So I started by studying 2 of them based on the knapsack or subset sum problem, and then I looked at quantum ways to solve them. So the first system I looked at was the Horror-Best, and this was created in the 80s, but it was not broken into the late 90s. That makes it like the longest standing knapsack cryptosystem that was not broken. And now the power line system was created by H.W. Lenstra when it looked like the Horror-Best system was going to be broken. And it's not technically a knapsack cryptosystem, it's just based on one. It's based on the Horror-Best. So it's similar to the Horror-Best, but doesn't share a lot of the same weaknesses. And there is not an existing classical algorithm for cracking it. So before I go into the 2 cryptosystems I looked at, I should do a quick note on notation and finite fields. So I represent finite fields as bold FF. So this is the finite field PBH. And this can basically be thought of as a polynomial where the coefficients are in the finite field P. So basically if P is an integer, that means that the coefficients are going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to P minus 1. And the polynomial will always have a degree H minus 1, or less. Another important note is multiplicative generators of finite fields. So that's basically an element of the finite field where if you raise it to many different powers, you can produce all the elements of the finite field you're working in, except the 0 element. So to create your public and private keys for the HORVEST system, we're working in the finite field P to the H, where P is prime and greater than H. And we produce a set of C's, which is the main part of our public key, and these C's are the exponents you have to raise the multiplicative generator to in order to create polynomials of this specific form. And then we add some random noise with another integer. But so basically we have a set C of integers, which are those exponents as our public key. Encryption, it's basically we create a subset sum problem. We add up the parts of the public key that correspond to one in our message so that we end up with a sum. And we send that sum over our unsecured channel. So if you're an eavesdropper and you, and this is not your cryptosystem and you get that sum, you're going to have to solve the subset sum problem for it, and the subset sum problem is really, really hard. However, if it is your cryptosystem and you have the secret key, you can decrypt it because you know the generator you used to create it. So if you raise that generator to the message, you create a polynomial which can be factored into the message. This factoring polynomials is much easier than factoring integers. So the power line system is similar to the HORVEST, except it never actually leaves the finite field. We stick with polynomials. We just conceal the structure of the polynomials. So we're working in our finite fields again, and we produce a set C, which are polynomials in that finite field. To encrypt it, we multiply the polynomials together, so we end up with another polynomial in that finite field. In order to factor it, we basically remove all the noise that was obscuring the form it takes, and then factor it. So, in order to crack the power line system, I reduced it down to a HORVEST system. Because when we basically create a HORVEST system from it. We choose an arbitrary generator G, and we find C's that we have to raise that G to in order to produce the polynomials that made up the public key of the power line system. So we've essentially produced a HORVEST system from our power line system. And because there are existing classical algorithms for breaking the HORVEST system, by reducing it down, we made it breakable. So obviously this proves that the power line system probably will not survive post-quantum computing, although I still need to run some tests for this. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank Professor Wim Van Dam for his help, and CNSI and EUREKA and EUREKA Lubin for giving me this opportunity. And this research was made possible in part by an NSF career grant.
Questions for Lindsay?
Yes. So how much did you know before starting this in terms of quantum computing, or at least some of these algorithms? I think you did a great job. Very interesting stuff.
I took a course on it last year during school, so I knew a little bit.
Okay, so the basics. Awesome.
So when these systems have been cracked in the past, are they cracked typically by someone individually trying to solve, go through and solve the problems, or is it someone creating algorithms that they just keep creating new and new algorithms that might eventually crack a system? So is it something that people send out these supposed cracking systems to a variety of different crypto systems to try and crack them automatically, or does someone actually have to physically try and work the problem out themselves?
Well, usually you can write like a mathematical proof that says, well, if we do this, we can get this part of the key, and with that part of the key, we can just get the rest of the key. So it's usually a mathematical proof. If it's not a crypto system that's like widely used, so there's no actual programs that use it, you don't usually have to do a physical showing, look, we cracked this message. Yes?
How quickly, when a crypto system is cracked, is it phased out, or is that completely off?
Well, a lot of the crypto systems that people actually look at and crack are not being used. Because there are a lot of crypto systems out there, but very few of them are actually used generally. The main one right now is RSA, and there's a couple of other ones similar to that. Yes?
How big of a problem do you think this is going to become
Quantum computing?
in cracking in code and
Well, there's
being
probably
able to transfer data under a secure system?
there probably won't be another quantum computer for a couple decades at least. So there's plenty of time, and there are some systems that people are fairly sure are not breakable with a quantum computer, but they tend to have they tend to be more awkward to implement than RSA. RSA, it's been around for a while, it's fairly easy to use. But I think it won't be that big of a problem. We'll find new systems, we just have to do that before the quantum computers become a big thing. Yes?
So how close is RSA to getting cracked, do you think?
Well, theoretically it is cracked. If there was a quantum computer, we could crack RSA. But it's the if there was a quantum computer.
And so cracking with our methods now is still far, I mean, it's still a relatively safe system.
Yes. Yes?
My understanding of RSA is you can crack it yourself, it will take you years and years
Yes.
to pull it off.
But
And it would only crack one particular use of it.
that's why it's a computationally hard problem. It's not really worth that. Nobody does that because it takes forever. And that problem can be solved just by making a longer key.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we will create the next quantum computer, but hopefully by then we'll have better crypto systems to protect our data. So thank you very much, Lindsay.